Hi everybody, welcome to today's episode. We have a very special guest for you today, and I'm not going to waffle on. I'm going to very quickly introduce her. She is an alchemist, and her name is Portia Tung. Hello, Portia.
Hello, Mandy.
How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Are you ready for this?
Yes, absolutely.
Interrogation. No, it's just going to be a conversation. Portia, with all of the guests, what we do is we ask the question, the question that everybody wants to know.
Sure.
How did it all begin for you? Where did it all start? What was your early career like? What was it like for you growing up? Who were your mentors, your influencers? And yeah, take us through the journey of how you're here today.
Yeah. So it's been really curious to become known as the play Alchemist. And really, if we start a little way back, but not too far back, it was from that moment after having given birth to my little girl, about sort of 2 nights in, I was doing the washing up. And there was this kind of thought that just crept up behind me, the kind that you just do not suspect. And the thought was, I would rather do the washing up than play with my little girl. And that was like the most terrifying thought. And it was something like out of Toy Stories, where I could see those little soldiers descend from above, crash into my window and want to snatch my baby away to protect a small baby, right? A child from a mother who doesn't only perhaps not know how to play, but doesn't want to play. And that's kind of been a pivotal point for the last sort of 10, 15 years of my journey. And I think what's inspired me to get here, really, if we go back to early childhood, is school. I really enjoyed primary school and I really enjoyed secondary school. And I think that's a surprise for a lot of people because, education systems may not be as warm and wonderful for lots of people, depending on the cultures and the countries you come from. But I was born in Hong Kong and I went to the Hong Kong International School. So I was educated alongside a whole bunch of expat American children. So it was very fun. It was very intercultural. But it was also very streetwise, shall we say, because it was a school in Hong Kong. And even though it was American speaking, my best friend was Chinese. And during playtime, we would just speak in Cantonese because it was the quickest way you can get on with playing. But I always remember there was this other little girl who would say, oh, you're in American school and you should be speaking in American instead of Cantonese. And so, the early themes of like belonging, safety and recognition, I think were sowed there. But I had some really lovely teachers, and both American teachers and teachers in England. But they were, I think, very nurturing, and they just showed me how to bring out human potential, right? By seeing potential in me that I didn't know I had. And I think that kind of inspired me to do a lot of the work I do today. So yeah, I'm a great believer of humanity and human potential.
So it was your teachers who influenced you, but negatively, but also positively, your friend or your play school
mates, I guess, yeah.
Who intervened and in a way to ask you to not speak in Cantonese.
Yeah, it's really...
So maybe had a bit of an impression.
Absolutely. And I think that's the nice thing about schools. Because you are, or just being able to play with your peers in different circumstances. And it's a bit like a wave, I call it sort of bobbing along. And, in life, if you just bob along on the surface all the time, it won't work, right? If you're out in open sea, you will not be around for long. So you do have to sort of deep dive on a regular intervals, if you can manage that. And then just kind of recombobulate, I call it, so that you can really... deep dive for that pearl, leave it there because we don't harm nature, and then come back up for air, and then you can bob along for a bit and reintegrate with everything you've learned. So absolutely, I enjoyed school because I found a sense of belonging there.
So how did you get to this alchemy thing? So how did that happen? I mean,
yeah,
this must have been some kind of an evolution of...
Absolutely. Yeah. So I did English and French at university. And then Dad offered to fund me for another course because he's like, I'm not sure that your English and French is going to get you very far. So in the end, I also did a master's in computer science, and that's how I got into IT. Again, really enjoyed that, taught myself how to program in Java in the early days. And the play alchemy thing is really about me being a bit of a people process geek. Once I got reasonably okay at programming, and I worked with lots and lots of really smart programmers who came from, the likes of the Spring Source framework, Rod Johnson and the others, and I could see how the techies were really collaborating, and the most effective ones were the ones that didn't argue. And I remember once going to, like Java 1 conferences with Rod and the team, and we would be sort of standing around the cocktail table or whatever, and we'd be sort of drinking drinks and having chat, and then the penny would drop in slow-mo in my mind that these people have never met face-to-face, and yet they've constructed an entire framework as an open source piece of software that was a massive thing, right? That took out a lot of the more prestigious established names, and they hadn't ever met in person. So I said to them, how did you create this then if you have never met? And they said, we read Rod's book, we agreed with it, and then one of the developers, Jürgen, he just eyeballs every single line of code that gets checked in to assure quality, and that's the way we worked. And that was also reflective of the way I worked in my master's course when we did teamwork, and that was the sense of team that I always kind of took forward. And in terms of the people side, I quickly discovered that my curiosity in how people functioned and worked and were being with each other was more interesting to me than just coding software. So I started turning my process geekiness into looking at how do we optimize, bringing out human potential. And it just happened that it was through play. So I had jobs working in banks, like sort of head of Agile in an investment bank, invited to introduce Agile to different teams and different cultures all around the world. And it was always the simulations where, it's called the extreme programming game. And, people get to blow balloons and fold hats. I mean, this was the precursor to most of the games out there now in the Agile world. And it was a wonderful way just to see managers come to me sort of within the first half day of doing this. They'll say, how did you get John to smile and laugh? I said, well, it's teamwork. It's about the environment. We've provided a good lunch. And then he said, it's just that John's worked for me for 10 years. I've never seen him so happy in my entire life. And I want it to continue. And it was just such a lovely human thing to connect at that level. And another great story that I like to share is in another time when I was in a European country, we were playing again, these simulations and training. And then by the end of the first day, two of the blokes who were doing the simulation together, they'd exchanged recipes to cook for their wives, even though they'd been sitting next to each other again for 5-10 years and only ever chatted to each other before that. So I couldn't ignore these kind of telltale signs of the transformative power of play. And I think that's what made me really curious. And the kind of play I'm talking about is, it's like the foundation and the magic underneath Lego Serious Play, underneath a lot of the sand tray play and play theories, because I'm just really curious about secret knowledge and how things work, and that's why I became the Play Alchemist.
It's interesting because with Lego, I've done the serious Lego training, and I was thinking about this prior to us meeting, and I was thinking, what is it about Lego that really does kind of just, it's all across the world. Everybody understands the Lego play, everybody loves Lego. And I think it's because it is just so tangible. It has this kind of, the moment it's got this kind of magic power to it where, you can connect things, and then it's all different shapes and sizes and colours, and so the power behind Lego is immense. So I'd like to dig a bit deeper into this play, because what happens when play goes wrong?
Well, so it's really interesting because I deliberately sought out to do Lego Serious Play facilitator training precisely because I have like Legophobia. So I don't like the harder edges. And like when you put the two pieces together and then you're like, oh no, they're wrong, I want to take them off. Then they kind of hurt your nail until they've got this new tool, that you can do it. And so for me, I actually prefer Playmobil. But as a personal challenge, the way I wanted to play was to test my courage and face my fears. So that's why I did the LSP training. So I think absolutely as a toy, it's obviously very, very popular, the colors of it. But I think it's about self-expression and the freedom to do that. And that could be with any materials. So I know LSP trainers who use Play-Doh and all sorts of other natural materials. But, before we had Lego, before we had actual toys in shops, we just played with the things that appeared in nature, on a walk in the beach or in the forest. And that's how humans have always played.
Yeah, well, just imagination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just imagination and storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So have you discovered any kind of pattern of where it's not working?
For play?
Yeah.
I think it's really important to go back to perhaps, let's call it my perception or definition of play, if that's okay, Mandy.
Yeah,
so I was really greatly inspired by the work by Dr. Stuart Brown, and he defines play sort of approximately as safe play, fair play, and being a good sport. I think that would be a nice summary. And actually, if you look at what goes on in the world, a lot of what's called play aren't those three things: safe play, fair play, being a good sport. They are not good, those things that happen. That includes football pitches, international tournaments when people feign being injured by another player in order to get some other player into trouble. That's not fair play. That's not true play. And so I think when people do that kind of play, then it's more like the sort of psychological gameplay of trying to trip people up, trying to get one up on somebody else just to demonstrate that you're smarter or bigger or better. Then that's not true play. So I think there's a lot of misconception of what play is. I like to think in the way that Mother Nature intended. Yeah.
So what do you do though when you've got conflict? Because at work, in a work environment, in maybe a family environment, or how do you
in relationships?
In relationships, because a relationship is going to go through that.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you deal with the conflict?
Yeah, well, so play is this really naturally healing and nurturing resource we all have, and relationships in many ways, I guess, are I want to say like they're designed to have rupture and repair as part of the cycle. And children know this all the time. Oh, I don't like you because you took the cookie, and you had no idea you took my favorite cookie. It's not like you're telepathic, but you might say, oh, I'm sorry, and you give me half, and then I'll take the other half, and then I'll be chewing on it in the playground, and then we'll feel better, and we're friends again. And I think we forget that actually play has this restorative notion that, did you mean to hurt me? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the question that a lot of the play experts say. That's how you know if it's true and safe play. And if you had intended to snatch my cookie for whatever reasons, because I'd done something to you last week that I didn't know about, and this is the thing about how children resolve it, how adults, and certainly in the workplaces, there's just so much taboo of feeling our emotions and being connected with our bodies that we may believe in the lies we tell each other and ourselves. And I think that's when the environment no longer feels safe, and then no one can trust each other, especially when it comes to promotion time. And then we wonder why teamwork's not working, and why the software is so awful, and why we have fewer clients than we wish for.
So there is this element of behaviour, there's a huge element of values. So if you have a look at the football scenario where somebody's not playing fair, these negative behaviours are going to come in. And I can't help but to think, as children, yes, possibly, children are the best, creatures to look at, because they kind of like fall out and then off they go, they're playing again. And before you know it, they're friends again. So I'm trying to think of how can the workplace be less competitive? I mean, at the moment, there's just so much out there in the social media, political arena, with, very oppressive leaders. So how can a workplace understand play? How can people understand play better
Yeah.
and use it as a tool?
Yeah. Well, let's look at competition first. If we look at competition in nature, I would say most animals, I don't know every single animal, but animals use competition to build up their strength, to know how fit or healthy they are, how strong they are, so that they will be prepared for when there is an attack from a bigger animal or when they need to protect their family, right? That's what competition is. It's about continuous improvement and learning. It's not about making somebody else feel worse. It's not about taking in someone else's share when you have enough yourself. And I think that's the thing. And, even if we look at the Olympics, it's really about, beating your own personal best rather than necessarily for a medal. And that was the original intention, right? If you look at the Olympics. So the funny thing is, because I'm a bit of a play geek, about 9 years ago, I went to a wonderful Danish conference called Counterplay, and they're running it again this year in Denmark in May 2026, Counterplay, where I came across the most playful adults I'd ever met. And I'd gone, of course, because at this point, I was feeling quite poorly in life and health and at work. And what is my purpose here? To try to make it a workplace more fun when perhaps the system or the company wasn't so interested. And when I started observing these adults, what was really amazing was they would consistently display 5 key attributes. And those attributes are playful adults are resourceful, responsible, respectful, resilient, and real, as in truly and safely authentic, like the Velveteen Rabbit. So I was looking at this, and these are the 5 R's, and I thought to myself, no one's going to believe me that, this is a manifestation of playful behaviors. So my daughter was about 4 or 5 back then. Mm-hmm. And so a bit like Sherlock Holmes or Enola Holmes, his sister, I would be watching her when she'd be playing. And I'd also observe her friends. And, the ones who were engaged in healthy play did exactly that. They'd be resilient, but they couldn't spell the word. So of course that led me to logically conclude that it's an innate characteristic of the nature of true play. And so that's gone on to become something called the Play Genius Quiz that you can take online, theschoolofplay.org, and you can just do a self-assessment on your play intelligence and see where you are in relationship to these 5 elements of playful behaviors.
So is the school play an institute? Is that?
Yeah, so I founded the School of Play as a company. It's me at the helm, if you like, and it's about it being a vehicle and a platform for me to share the play science research I do, as well as how, I use this work to make organizations to help them become more effective, efficient, and to just enjoy work more. Yeah.
Brilliant. Wow. So you've given us a really good insight into how you've got here, and you've carried on. So you've carried on with this play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's working.
Well, and inventing games was a really great way of traveling to see the world when I first started out in my career. Could I'd submit proposal to sessions. I wasn't very well known then. I was a newbie. Sometimes more experienced professionals would offer to pair with me to run a session, so I'd learn from them. But what was really fun was it felt fairly meritocratic in that, because I had no name, it was about the proposals that I would submit and the outcome. So I got really good at designing interactive, transformative sessions that really made people think.
So a lot of people talk about the qualities of individuals. So if you focus on your strengths, you're going to actually have a better output, better outcome. Do you think play also does that?
So for me, play is really about the freedom to be who you are. And even going back to what you said about, being perhaps in more dominating environments or settings and then achieving results, it's always about it's very easy to carry our pocket mirror and do that to everybody. But actually it's about turning it to face ourselves, because then we can actually look at this continuous learning and development. And what can I improve? Because in any interaction, there's at least 2 parties involved. And certainly it's easy to, you can really only blame or shame another person if you're not looking at yourself and what you've brought to the table.
And what about that when somebody's looking at themselves and they are not happy and they do self-sabotage and they are, for example, I don't know, let's take a demographic of developers, for argument's sake. You've got these brilliant software developers, but the organization wants the developer to step up and be a manager.
Yeah.
And, he or she despises that because their creativity is in, software. So what about those sorts of situations?
Great. And I'd like to emphasize to your viewers, Mandy, that you're also a developer, don't you? You consider yourself having been a developer. I have
done one line of code.
Yeah. And I've been a software developer too. I think more generally, this is where the play thing really is at its best. Because once I started looking at, well, how do we manage relationships? Well, it begins with ourselves. And how do we judge ourselves less? By judging others less. So it always comes back to us. So it's about learning how to really play with you and who you are. And so a lot of the work I do now with the play alchemy is looking at, well, how do we face these very difficult shadows and then trace back to the point of origin of how it happened that we now have this chip on our shoulder about people criticizing our code, and therefore we can't go into stand-ups anymore because I have to be the alpha in the pack. And it is a very difficult thing to look at if you're very serious about it. But the fact is, we all pee, we poop, and we die. There's at least 3 facts that we all have in common, right? And we were lucky enough to arrive here. And I think when we recognize that actually we are the greatest joke of all in our own lives, life can just be so much more lighthearted. And a lot of the play research that has gone on, especially when you look at Nobel Prize winners and laureates, is that the most successful scientists often who get these prizes are also the most playful because they laugh when things don't go, if ever we drop an apple and it goes up, well, we know that's going to be a wacky day to have, right? We don't go, well, we demand that the laws of gravity is correct and they are immutable. I mean, that would just not make any scientific sense.
Yeah. So I think, for me, the play makes a lot of sense. Play just kind of relaxes you. It comes from our childhood. And also nowadays, a lot of people, they love playing board games. There's just generations and generations who have grown up on computer games.
Yes.
So play is a big thing. But if you went into an organisation and said, oh, yes, we're going to do play, do you think, would they take you seriously?
So I don't talk about it in that way because it's important to be clear about what we each mean by play. So I present it as playful leadership. Okay. And it's all about working on your ability and your skills and knowledge in terms of how to become a better leader. And through the Play Genius quiz, for example, I work with CEOs and their leadership teams where I invite them to take the quiz, of which it includes things like, I am respectful, I am responsible. And they take that quiz from their own perspective. And then I invite them to take the quiz from a we as a leadership team perspective. And then again, as the organization's perspective. And it's really interesting, when you might get teams where leaders trust themselves less than their leadership team members. Or there'll be very clear signals when there are disconnections between how an organization is working as well as their leaders. But because of the play science behind it, it's all about childhood development. It's very familiar. And there's some kind of honesty to it because it's, I'm not a psychologist or psychotherapist. What I did was I took a lot of the play theory and then I just applied and lived it and really tested it with folks who really wanted to know, well, actually, what does respect really feel like? Or what does caring for your colleagues look like? Because it's certainly not the same as family in many ways. Because I think a lot of us get into entanglements with work is that we think that our employer or our business is the same as our family, and they're not. It might surprise some of us, but you can't fire your spouse. Now there might be days you want to, but But you didn't. You divorced them. It's very different. You don't put them on a performance review. It's, I think
you're absolutely right. I don't think work and family systems are, they're different. You can't rock up to a work environment and make a demand that it be like your family system.
I'm not sure you'd want to either, really.
Well, it depends. It depends what kind of a family system you have. If you have a very lovely family system and you demand that at work, and you can't, because the culture is different. It's two different cultures.
Yeah.
And it may be that you might be lucky that the culture that you're in the workplace is this, is just as wonderful as your upbringing was.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating how people do sometimes think like that, and they do say, we're a family at work. It's a system. It's not necessarily a family.
Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of hit the nail on the head, Mandy, where a family is a system, your team at work is a system, your department is a system, your organization, your tennis club, all of those are systems. And what's really interesting that I've come across is that's kind of gone into the mix with Play Alchemy, is that systems have principles that ensure it's flourishing. So when a system is not prospering, it's usually because there are issues with belonging, safety, and recognition. There are maybe people in an organization who are taking too much from the organization without delivering the value for which they have been paid in return. So when you don't maintain a balance of exchange, and for example, that person is allowed to continue to do that, and the manager does nothing, that will lead to the decay of a system, bad team morale, and the human beings are just so sensitive and so clever to have evolved this notion of unfair play. A 1-year-old can spot unfair play when they've been given a smaller plate than their 3-year-old sibling, right?
I think I'm really interested in that, the unfair play. I think there's a lot to learn from that, just that, the sort of anti-pattern.
Absolutely. And like one of the exercises I love doing with people, and you can do this at home as well, is, you can maybe choose 3 objects. Use one object to represent yourself, one object to represent play, and then another object to represent the block. And just lay them out. And, you could do this with Lego, you could do this Playmobil, do it with your books or your furniture or whatever. And just sort of notice the relationship that you map out, and what is it about each of those elements? Because it's not about, people not being creative or playful, because adults will tell me, I don't feel very playful, and I feel a bit embarrassed about that. And it's like, oh, well, let's explore what that means, because I think play is actually a really, it could be a raw and tender subject for a lot of people who haven't had as much play, like myself, in our childhood as we'd like.
So did it just come to you that this play thing is important, or, was it specifically when you had your daughter?
Yeah, and that epiphany, dark soul of the night moment.
Was that like that for you?
Yeah, I think it was partly that, but it's because, Mandy, and I was just thinking about when I first had this notion, and I think I must have been I was in England, and I don't know, I must have been about like 12 years old. And, when you're a young person, and my mum had moved back to Hong Kong, and I was living with my dad and my brother. I remember, and I'm not a religious person, but I remember every night I would go to bed, but before I go to bed, I'd pray. And it was nothing, my family aren't religious. But I think I must have read about, Church of England and, the breakup of the monasteries. And, you learn about history at school.
What were you praying for?
Well, I was praying. I would say something like, Dear God, if you're out there. And it was very tentative, but I said, Dear God, please bless me, my family, and the whole wide world. And I would do this strangely every night. It was just a memory that came back recently. And like I said, even now, I wouldn't say I was a religious person, but if you're into systems thinking and you really understand and embody the systemic principles of flourishing, then actually I'd say I'm a spiritual person, and I understand there are forces that are operating way bigger than me and will operate for way longer. But it's that, I think that child who kept on making those prayers eventually thought, well, actually, I've got a runway of, I don't know, 60 years or 70 years if I'm lucky. Maybe we should just go for world peace. And so So I said, yes. I said, let's do that. But of course, once I took on that challenge, I was like, oh no, this was a terrible mistake. Because for world peace to happen, it's got to begin with inner peace, that mirror. So I started having to make things fun. So one of the sets of games that I invented, if you like, is called Agile Fairytales. It's available on agilefairytales.com, agilefairytales.com and .org. And it was all about remembering the lessons we learned as children, but have since forgotten. So there are things like, the Emperor's New Clothes and looking at congruence and, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and peer coaching. And I was just trying to figure out how to help myself become a better person, and then that would be my contribution to world peace, and I'd be satisfied.
I love that. So what do you do now? So what's your current situation like?
What do I do day to day?
What do you do that maybe people may not be familiar with?
So most recently, I've taken a little bit of time out to really concentrate on finishing my second book.
Okay.
So it's called Play Genius, How Playful Leadership Transforms the Way We Work, Lead, Love and Live. So that's a prototype there. It's coming out this spring, summer. It's taken about 10 years to write. Wow. And I guess that's how long it takes to give birth to yourself. Is the way I'll explain it. So, for a child, for a baby, a human baby, it's 9 months if you're lucky enough to get, to conceive. But I just went with the flow, and I also prioritized caring for my child, because I thought to myself, if I only cared about my own accomplishment to achieve this thing, then what good is it in bringing the book into the world? It's just about my own personal journey and mystery of why don't I know how to play? And it's all around this, my missing case of play is the premise. And I go on this journey to find the answer.
Lovely. I look forward to it. When will it be coming out?
Spring, summer this year.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, wonderful. It's on its way.
We shall put all the links into the podcast that you've mentioned thus far, because you've mentioned some very interesting ones. So
thank you, Mandy.
We shall do that. So what have been some of the challenging bits for you, would you say?
I think working as a change agent, an agile coach, an executive coach, it's very easy to become maybe cynical or disillusioned with the work we do, because maybe sometimes people just don't want to change for whatever reasons in the context they're in, or it's not the right time. And I think if we are very achievement driven, then we take on that, and that becomes integrated, if you like, or collapse into our own sense of self of not being good enough. But actually, so long as we are constantly developing ourselves and really understanding what transformation means for ourselves, then others will naturally be inspired to do the work they need to do, is what I find.
Yeah. So how do you handle that challenge?
So one of the things I remember when I was working in a bank was people were really stressed out, and I could see that. They had no time for really continuous improvement and learning, and really they just needed a break. So I found a place near the senior manager's office, and these are like glass offices, so everyone can see everything that's going on as far as your eye can see. And so I set up these small tables, I put up some posters, and I sent emails to everybody about, we're going to do the Marshmallow Challenge. It'll only be half an hour after work. And that was it. So I didn't hear very much. And I brought the marshmallow sticks, and I thought, you know what? The show must go on. I'll build that marshmallow tower, with a single marshmallow and spaghetti on my own, and I'll have a good time if no one else will, because this is my purpose here. It's to remind people about some joy at work and team camaraderie, and doing something that it doesn't matter if we fail at, but it would be so good for team morale. Anyway, I remember as I was laying things out, a colleague would come up to me, and he'd be all like kind of grumpy, is what probably people would describe. And he said, "What are you doing there?" And I'll say, "I'm setting up this challenge. It's this, He goes, "When does it start?" And I was like, "It starts at 5. How long will it be?" "It'll be 30 minutes. Can I eat the marshmallow?" "No, you can't, because we have to use it to build the tower." And he asked all these questions. And then he was like, I'll think about it. And then he showed up. And, it's through these interactions that I realized that actually when people are really questioning why you are playing, they're actually trying to get answers to their own questions of, are they welcome to come and play too? So, I'd swing by his desk just before we start and say, hey, Tom, remember, no eating of the marshmallow, but there'll be spaghetti for you. And then he came and we played. And, the senior manager was like, just really grateful, I guess, that we were able to raise morale at a time when it was so difficult to get deliveries out.
Like a big theme that's coming out, resonating is that there's a lot of kindness in your play. And your
I guess it's kind of in line with world peace, inner peace, compassion, and just setting aside that self-judgment, because I think at the end of the day we're humans, we make mistakes. Relationships give us a chance to practice rupture and repair and even redemption, right? Like the best movies. And that's how we grow, being able to stand up and say, I'm sorry. I think it's like people should get a medal for that, because it's very difficult often to take responsibility.
Definitely. Let's have a little break. Right. Yeah. Let's do a little break, because we've been so at it for full on. It's been brilliant. Right. What are you terrible at but secretly enjoy?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are lots of things I'm terrible at.
But secretly you enjoy it. So you
secretly enjoy it.
I really...
You give me one of yours.
I love karaoke.
But
I'm terrible at it.
How do you know that?
Because I know. Because I tell you what, I was at a karaoke with my sister-in-law a long time ago, and they were all doing the karaoke, and I was laughing at them. And one lady, it was a women's thing out, and one lady just put the microphone in front of me and said, right, you do it if you think you're so good. So I took the microphone and I started doing it, and everybody was laughing, just wetting themselves, because I was so bad. But that's all right. That I secretly enjoy it. I'm terrible at it.
Okay, then I guess we'll go back to my one is playing with the ukulele. So I don't describe I play the ukulele, because I don't do that. I play with it. So one of the acid tests I used to do is working with organizations. I start ukulele jams once a week. I'd bring the songbooks and I'd bring the ukuleles. So once we were doing this, and and it's fairly easy, 4 chords, easy, and you would sing along and strum. And then one of my colleagues, he'd be sitting next to me, and then when we finished the song, he'd go, wow. I said, hello? He said, you really can't play. I said, yeah, I told you. Why else do you think I'm here? This is the least terrifying place for me to practice. I can't even practice on my own.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. So I'm going to ask you one more thing. Do you have a useless talent? Because you're very talented.
Useless talent. A useless talent. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if my husband might describe it as useless, but sourdough making. I think I just love making sourdough bread. It isn't useless, but it does feel indulgent, probably, the number of things you can make. And it's just helped me develop such a love with those microbes. And sometimes I bring the starter and it sits with me when I do work, because I don't have pets. And it grows a little bit. And there's this connection and respect for microbes, because I think after humanity, microbes are the most collaborative creatures on the planet, according to Google anyway.
That's giving me goosebumps. So, Portia, how do you define success?
Yeah. Success for me is, this makes me feel a bit weepy now. It's like being on my deathbed and that my family wants to visit me because they want to, and then we can still play together. And I think for me, that's success, a job well done.
Wow, that really is... That's impressive.
I play the long game.
That's deep.
Yeah.
Very. I can tell you're a very spiritual person.
Well, I don't know about that. I probably just enjoy the play.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. And if you were to give a billboard message to, say, future professionals, people in an early career, me as a newbie podcaster, what kind of message would that be?
Yeah, and this is actually part of the lyrics that one of my cohorts in Playful Leadership Program wrote together, which is something like, go with the flow and trust what is in store for you.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. Exciting, Mandy.
So lovely. Gosh, I just want to keep asking you more questions. How do you maintain your balance?
Spending a lot of time in nature. So I didn't realize until recently that I actually get a lot of energy from spending time on my own. So now I regularly go to a deer park where I do long walks. And there's something very special about being stared at by deer. Because of course they, in the animal world, are prey. So the only predator in the equation in the field is me. And if I'm not predating and I'm just being pally too, there's this this magical peace that establishes between two creatures, which is such an amazing thing. I guess a bit like mother and baby, or you and your pet. Yeah.
Wow.
An understanding.
Wow. Well, it's really sad, but we have come to the end. But I have to say, you are amazing. The amount of stuff that you are doing with the new book and what you've also achieved.
Well, as are you, Mandy.
Oh, thank you. But I'm just starting out.
We're always just starting out, I think. That's a good way to be.
That's a good way to be, yeah. Is there anything else you'd like the audience who may listen to?
Yeah, I guess I'd say, where there is play, there is hope. And play once a day to keep the doctor and the priest away.
Yeah, definitely. Play is good. It's got to be good. It makes you just kind of come alive, like you say.
Well, it's kept humanity coming to where we are now, and hopefully it'll keep us going for a bit longer.
Fingers crossed, and amen to that. Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you. Wow, isn't she amazing? If you've enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and share, and we shall see you on the next one. Thank you very much.